The Blocktalk podcast started because of my passion for the property management industry. I wanted to start a conversation and add some value within the industry with a diverse range of people and professionals who can add something extra. My aim is that the podcast offers some useful insight into a variety of views, opinions, thoughts, and foresights from our guests, who include business leaders and industry experts. If you enjoy the podcast and want to find out any other information, head on over to brianwelsh.co.uk. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Blocktalk podcast with me, Brian Welsh. This year on the podcast, we're speaking to industry leaders and professionals about the future of property management, looking ahead to 2030, which, God, is only 5.5 years away, isn't it? And what changes and predictions people have. Today, I'm delighted to welcome today's guest, who is an industry leader in Scotland and has been on the podcast a couple of times before, David Doran. David's Managing Director of Hacking and Paterson Management Services, is Vice President of PMAS as well at the moment, and also a Fellow of TPI, just recently renamed from the Institute of Residential Property Management. David, thanks for coming on again.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
Good. How are you? You well?
Yes, good. Enjoying some Scottish summer.
Yeah, it is peeing it down today, isn't
Yeah,
it? But never mind.
miserable.
Okay, so let's crack on. Let's start with major changes you foresee happening by 2030 in the industry.
I'll probably be quite controversial and say, sadly, not a huge amount.
Okay.
I think there's a lot going on in the industry. A lot of talk of legislation. Obviously, you've got the work of the Tenement Maintenance Working Group that's ongoing at the moment, and the SLC, the Scottish Law Commission's consultation, to introduce Formal Owners Association, which is all positive.
Yeah.
But in our opinion, lacks the real teeth that it needs to make a change and to make a difference. The Scottish Law Commission put together a report on tenement buildings 34 years ago.
Yeah.
That was followed on by the Housing Improvement Task Force 23 years ago.
Right.
And still we're in a position where you've got a country where a large proportion of the housing stock is falling into disrepair, if not already in disrepair.
Okay.
And it's all because of the same old problem, that is either homeowners don't want to repair their buildings, can't repair their buildings, don't have the finances to repair their buildings, but more importantly, there's no one coming in and stepping in to do anything about it, i.e. a local authority or a government to step in and use their powers to make it happen, to enforce things. So when I look ahead to 2030, I see the Owners Association legislation coming in. But all I really see that doing is transferring a current obligation that owners have into a new entity.
Yeah.
So they'll still have the same obligations.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple of more to do, things like prepare a budget and call an annual meeting and appoint a manager. But in terms of actually getting the repairs to the buildings done, there isn't a huge amount of teeth to that piece of legislation. Okay. And it's still going to need owners to be compelled to be.
So you could have a committee, but if 15 out of the 20 people don't want to do it, they're still not going to get done.
Yeah, so you've got a situation where you can have a group of homeowners who will be forced at that point to become an owners association, which will be a legal entity of a certain. That legal entity will have to have a manager. Now, that manager can be one of the group of homeowners, or they can appoint what we know as a factor to do that and to press forward things like budgets. There'll be a legal obligation to have a budget, but there's no guidance around what that means. What is the budget? The budget, the owners could decide the budget's £10. Who's enforcing that? I don't see a point in time, let's say by 2030, because they're talking of this legislation coming in 27, that you've got local authority or government inspectors walking around, chapping doors and saying, okay, can you show me your budget? Can you show me what work you're getting done to your building? Otherwise, we're going to step in. So I think that's a problem. I think the legislation will increase liabilities to managers, which will ultimately then increased costs to homeowners, because if a manager, whether it's an owner or a factor, is being bound to make sure everyone's insured, there's a lot of effort in that, and there's a lot of liability in that. So that's an issue. But to me, it all comes back down to, where is the enforcement of it? Because most homeowners want to repair their building. And they're maybe tied down by some that don't, or some that can't. And there's not a lot of guidance to how to help the ones that can. And there's not a lot of enforcement to overturn the ones that don't want to do it. And I think there's a bit of a impasse. You've got the building, the cladding remediation bill, for example. A great piece of legislation on paper, that is basically looking at properties that are deemed to be defective or dangerous. And the government have a large pot of money to help those owners repair those buildings. Great. What about the 130-year-old tenement next door that's fallen down? There's no pot for them. There's no enforcement of those owners. So going back to the question, where will we be? Major changes? I think the major changes will be in terms of legislation and the efforts that are need to be undertaken by homeowners, by factors, in order to get repairs done. I think that's where the changes will be. I think the industry will continue, as we've seen it recently, to constrict. I think there'll be less people looking to be a manager. Whether it's a homeowner or a company. I think the smaller companies operating in industry will start to find it even harder than it is. Our industry, for probably as a result of its history, is often demonised. And all of us in the industry, PMAS, TPI, have been trying to kind of reduce that image, shall we say, for a number of years. But I think that will continue, despite the role of the manager becoming probably more and more important, more and more serious, and more professional, which we as an industry, as are already tackling via professional qualifications and standards, code of conduct, all of these kind of things. But factoring hasn't changed since it started. Well, it has in a sense, as we've talked about in previous podcasts. Factors were in place to collect rent for landlords years ago. When it became owner occupied, repairing a building in that sense, or the admin behind repairing a building, hasn't changed in 100 years. The way we do things in terms of technologies and communication has changed, and that will continue to change as that develops. But actually, how do you fix a roof? The admin around that doesn't change. It's the same job. It's just how you get that engagement from homeowners that hopefully will change. But again, that's all down to, as we've talked about, the education of why the SLC are doing this. I would bet some money on it that if you polled 100 blocks of flats, very few of them would actually know that this is coming. This consultation is out there. And it affects them more than it affects anyone else. So it's this media point of, where is the information to the homeowners to help this, to help make major changes by 2030, to actually get them on board to say, this is well, it's not even for the homeowners' benefit, I think, and that's a point that's missed quite a lot. This is all about the buildings. Because the homeowners are transient. Even more so than they ever were. The days of people staying in blocks of flats for 40, 50 years are slowly dying. They're in for 3, 4, 5 years, and then they're moving on. So this legislation is more about protecting the built environment than actually protecting the owners, which is the way it should be, to keep the building standing.
No, I get what you mean. No, that's an interesting point, actually, because you don't need to, having even buildings that have residents associations and committees and all of these sort of things in Scotland still sometimes struggle to get work. Right. So it's not going to change that overnight or fix that problem overnight.
No, it's not. And they've got this go-to, or what the SLC are trying to introduce in this legislation, is almost like a default property manager. So if an owners association refuses to do something, any one of those owners have the right to go to a court and have a property factor appointed or a property manager appointed.
That doesn't mean they're going to get the work done.
And that's the bit that's missing, and that's the teeth that we talk about and we look at to say that, that's great, we'll happily be an emergency factor, but where's the money coming to actually repair it? Is there going to be a fund like the cladding remediation bill? Is there going to be some enforcement action from local authorities that has a fund behind it that allows the manager to get the repairs done and then go for the minority of owners that have maybe not paid for that? Because that's all it tends to be.
A minority.
It tends to be the minority. And most property managers, property factors, or if this is a homeowner manager, ultimately, as the years go on, they will likely only have to take action against one or two owners for these big repairs. But most factors are willing to do that. And maybe look 18, 20 months down the line before that money's recovered. But it's the initial outlay and saying, well, nobody's interested in this. Where is that coming from?
Fair point. You're right, though, about the market as well, because there's a huge, we've had this conversation out with this, there's a huge amount of acquisitions going on. There's a lot of the smaller guys getting out. There's obviously various reasons for that. Not maybe just this stuff that's coming down the line. There's a few startups, though. There are a few smaller startups that are kind of heading into the market. But certainly over the last 2-3 years, the number of acquisitions has increased dramatically.
It's been I would say huge, because in years gone by, it's never been like that. It's never been as huge. Small factors, maybe 500-600, 1,000 units would go quite regularly because they would start up and they would have a great time and it would be working well, and then they would then counter this problem of some people aren't wanting this service. And I can't get over that because I don't have the reserves here to go through it. And that was always a problem. I think now you've also got issues, as we're seeing around the world, of staff. There's staff are moving about more often than they ever used to move about, which is another issue. And again, the smaller you are as a company, the more higher percentage of your staff that becomes as turnover. So that's difficult to achieve, and you've got to work out ways of making your package as attractive as it is, making the environment as attractive as it is, and making the job, I suppose, as attractive as it is, because it shouldn't be a difficult job, but it can be, and it tends to be because, as we've heard and talked about before, the reports on well-being from the TPI, where how people in this industry are feeling due to how they are treated. And we're not the only industry that experiences that. That's a post-COVID problem that's yet to dilute itself. So that's another reason why I think a lot of these companies are saying this is getting harder and harder to provide a service that we're trying to provide a service for someone's benefit, but there's maybe a small minority or a small fraction within that group that are just very difficult and make life uneasy when you're trying to deliver that service to a bigger group. And a lot of these businesses will probably be taking a decision and saying, this isn't for me.
I mean, at a certain level, I don't know what that level is. Let's say 2,500 units. You're almost in a lifestyle business anyway. You're doing a job, you're enjoying it, but you're right. Pleasing all of the people all the time is a very difficult thing to do. And B2C, business to consumer is one of the hardest things to do. I mean, B2B is it difficult? Probably far less difficult than B2C, So.
And we're even worse. We have B2C, but C is a group of different people with different backgrounds, with different employment statuses, with that. And, so selling property factoring is not the easiest of things. It's not like you can go to one customer and you've got a factoring contract. Sometimes you're going to 350 customers and trying to sell what you can do for them. And going back to my point, factoring hasn't changed in 100 years. Technologies have, but actually what every factor in the country does, we all probably do it pretty much the same. With wee nuances here and there, whether it's a different style of portal, a different way of communicating, and at the end of the day, it's customer service that changes whether somebody wants a factor or not. Or long-term relationships. Again, a lot of people stay with you for 20, 30 years, or buildings stay with you for 20, 30 years, and then come to the end of a natural relationship and move on to something else. Which fuels your up and coming property factoring companies, which is great, because the more property factoring companies in there, because there's still 250,000 units out there that aren't factored. There needs to be more companies. Because these young companies, as we've seen and we've talked about before, a lot of them have great ideas and have brought a lot of great innovation in terms of communication, in terms of the technology they're using. They've not brought innovation in terms of the job that needs to get done, but just in the way they're doing it, the way they're delivering customer service. And having been in the industry for 100 years, not personally myself, but our firm, we've learned from that, and we've developed in conjunction with you portals and all of these kind of things that allow us to dispel the myth that we're the old dinosaur factor and they're the fresh young factor. Where no, we've all got the same technologies, and we're just adapting to the new world that we live in.
I mean, you're right. The biggest change has been technology, and will continue to be so as well. I think that's what we're coming on to next anyway. Okay, thanks for that, David. Let's move on. So exactly. How do you think automation and digitization will impact the landscape in the next 6 years?
It depends how far it goes, I suppose. It's how far can you automate and how far can you digitize. There's only so much I think you can do, and I think we're very far along that road in terms of how things are automated backroom wise, and how things are processed behind the customer facing element of a factoring business. I think the further we automize and the further the digitization happens, it can only be a good thing for customer service. Because what we as a business are trying to do is get all the mundane roles and the mundane tasks away from humans and get them automated, but so that we can take these people and put them in front of people, our customers. And I think that's probably where I think the biggest impact will be is and you go on to talk about it, is this turnaround from online presence to really actually back to speaking to people face to face, because they've then got the time because of the automation. The workforce then have the time, as I've talked about, the kind of transitioning workforce. I think I read somewhere recently that by 2025, 27% of the workforce will be Gen Z. And they're all about automation. They're all about short technology, quick answers, quick. So that's where it'll start to change. Start to see things like WhatsApp kicking in, even from business to business internally. You can start seeing communication between staff and businesses being dealt with through that medium, because that's how the people in the business have learned to communicate, are used to communicating and are best at communicating. And it's trying to work out, as we all do, where is the balance in that? Where are the controls? How do you control WhatsApp communication between customers and your business? As well as you can control email, as well as you used to be control, the written word, and somebody would check a letter before it goes out, that kind of thing. Whereas you're now at a stage where people might, in that scenario, be sending WhatsApps with, not the perfect Queen's English, but understandable to both parties that are in it, but maybe not understandable to someone who's never been in that world and think, I don't get this. I don't understand how this can be good. Whereas the customer's saying, this is excellent. This is the service I want. So I think automation does that, and it also helps, I think, or will help this flux and staff coming and going as well, where it's giving staff the tools to not make them feel new and not knowing what they're doing. And it's almost building up this system where things like Google Maps is a prime example. Years ago, if you were new into the industry and an owner phoned up and says, I'm from Clarkston Road, I've got a problem with my gutter, you'd be sitting there saying, I have no clue where Clarkston Road is, what the building looks like, etc. Whereas now you can have somebody on the phone saying, I'm looking at your property in 3D. I've got it up in front of me. I can see it's a tenement. I can see it's a tenement Clarkson Road. Is it the gutter beside the bin store? Is it the gutter on the front? And that customer should leave that call feeling that they've been listened to, that the person knows what they're talking about, and that the job's going to get done.
Yeah.
And I think that then streamlines everything, because that homeowner isn't then going speaking to the neighbour and saying, I spoke to them, the person didn't know what they were, where we were, what this was, I'm not really confident, can you phone up or can you send an email? And you've gone from having one call and a confident customer to having two calls, an email, and two customers who are not confident the job's going to get done. So I think all of these digitalist tools as such, I think that's can only benefit customer service. And I think that's where I'd certainly like our business to be using it best. I think we've got a lot of good systems and flows in place for the background stuff.
Yeah.
But it's now all about how do we transfer that into staff time that allows them to give more time to actually being with people and speaking to people.
There's certainly a lot of stuff that we're talking about internally. And in fact, we'll probably be talking about some of it, or Tom will be when he presents at the PMAS conference in October, to do that. So something where your teams, new people or established people in the organization can find information very, very quickly about the property, about, I don't know, the last 10 things that have happened at that property. Do you know what I mean? This sort of stuff that just gives them a gauge of where everything is and but can deliver that very, very quickly to them. So that gives them new people a lot more confidence in the way they do them. So that's certainly something that we're looking at from a technology point of view.
Because property is very emotive. It's unusual. I was having this conversation, I think it was last week, and I was saying it's very unusual. We get a lot of customers saying, "Oh, I had Susie last week, but Susie's gone," or I had, Susie's a third property assistant that's been looking after our property. So it's a very personal relationship that's built, which is unusual, because if you phone your bank, you phone your mobile phone, you don't know who you're speaking to. You don't know how new they are, whether they've been there for years, but they come across as if knowing all about what they're doing and all about you, because they've got the systems, they've got the technology in place, and you don't rely on that personality, which in our industry, without those systems all the time, you're relying on the personality and having the confidence in who you're speaking to. So when that person goes away and you've got a new person, it's like starting the relationship again. And that's where I think, as we move forward, we need to get a better handle on, because there is going to be change. So we need to have a better handle on how our customers can be confident from just speaking to anyone in our organisation, that person will be able to understand what's going on in their property, without having to go and speak to someone, without having to delay or phone back. It's just a kind of instantaneous access to, when was the last repair? What does the deed say about this? And we've talked about that with AI. All these things that, if you type into your chat GPT at the moment, write me a letter about this, it does it. Things like that, but that need to be a bit more bespoke to each and individual building.
But I mean, that's where the data is coming from, though, right? You know what I mean? That's your data set you're looking at to get that answer. Okay, interesting. Okay, so moving on from automation, there's a lot of focus on the environment in terms of pesticides and greener energy. How do you think this will affect your business?
I think it's already affecting business. I think all of us in business are looking at ways to be greener in any ways which we can do, and following on from automation and digitisation, that's helping that scenario. So going paperless is a big thing. Which we are slowly going through that process. We're now, I think, 60-40 in terms of what we're issuing out. The company is electronic. We used to have printers in every room, and we've got, we must have 30 property factoring rooms across our 2 offices. So we've now reduced that to 2 multi-function photocopiers, where, so reducing the number of printed copies that we're having to do, looking at energy that's coming into our buildings that we own, and saying, okay, are we looking at green energy? How do we make that better?
Yeah.
We've automated our fleet.
Yeah.
Into electric cars. So we've now got 3 electric cars that used to be diesel cars. So that, that's all how we as a business are trying to achieve that. Other ways as business, I think it's controlling and knowing what you can do. And I think there's another argument on that from working from home as well.
Yeah.
And if you've got a huge amount of people working from home, it's very difficult to ascertain how green you as a company are.
Yeah.
Because you don't know how green each of your employees' houses are.
Yeah.
In terms of our customers, it's not as easy as that, and that's the problem that I see. It's not as easy to be green in these historical multi-ownership buildings. Obviously, the new stuff that's going up is EV chargers, solar panels, better insulation, all of the kind of green technology. But when you're looking at the tenement stock, which is the majority of multi-owned buildings in the country, it's not as easy to make them green.
Yeah.
It's not as easy to get EV chargers you've experienced living in that kind of area. You can't get EV chargers.
There's not an EV charger.
Into a tenement block.
There's not an EV. There's not a public EV charger in the area that my parking permit is for.
Yeah. I think it goes back to your where these see us in 2030. That falls into green as well, because you've got to fix the fundamentals.
Yeah.
And to me, in a lot of our country's properties, the fundamentals are broken.
Yeah.
So they're not wind and watertight.
Yeah.
They don't have double glazing.
Yeah.
They don't have insulation. But we're talking about putting solar panels on roofs.
Yeah.
And we're talking about installing EV facilities,
when the heat's just piling out
when
the building
heat's
anyway.
blowing out the building out of single glazed, windows, So to me, that's where the focus should be, because that will make it greener than it is at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay, not as green as where you want to get to.
Yeah, but you got to start something.
But you got to start. What's the point of having solar panels that are, converting sun, but then it's just all going out, the 2 top floor flats that have got single glazing windows and no central heating, they're burning electric fires all day.
Yeah.
So there's a huge problem. And you look at communal expenses, green energy is more expensive.
Yeah.
And when you're if you want to try and explain that to a group of owners, we can get you green energy, but it's more expensive. A group of owners looking at their common electricity are saying, well, not all of us are concerned about this, and it's dearer. So we'll just go with your fossil fuel energy price. It's not as simple. I would like to see us sort the fundamentals, first. And obviously all new stuff is getting it anyway.
Okay.
So I think, affecting our business, we're doing what we can with what we have.
Yeah.
From our customers, it needs the first fundamentals fixed. They need these buildings brought up to a repairable standard before you then look at the green stuff.
And now you're back to the question we asked you first, where is the legislation or the things being worked on just now actually going to change that?
It's not. It's going to help it, because it's going to try and amend some existing legislation to allow green initiatives to come into place without having, at the moment, as you know, a lot of green initiatives are improvements.
Yeah.
So they need unanimity.
Yeah.
So everyone needs to be on board with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas they're trying to change some of the existing legislation to say, and it's not necessarily an improvement if it's about green image and stuff like that. So that would be a positive.
Yeah.
Because that would help you do things that would help it, like insulation and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So what about buy-to-let versus ownership landscape, and how will that affect what you do and how you operate? Huge amount of things going up now. I mean, just not far from here in Glasgow, which is all, well, not all, but a good chunk of buildings are being built to rent and things like that.
Yes.
And then you've got the buy-to-let stuff as well. Huge stuff. So how does that change things?
I think it changes things going forward in terms of the BTR stuff, build to rent stuff, the big blocks of flats that you're seeing that are getting put up. They're a different model, a different type of property factoring. I think the PMAS's discussions with TPI and the industry's involvement in TPI will start to help our understanding of that market. because they've got a huge build to rent. I think it's going to slow down.
Okay.
I think what's happened in terms of letting legislation and all the legislation surrounding that has put a lot of people off. Certainly, I was at last year we were at a seminar and Patrick Harvey was one of the speakers, and he was getting a bit of a hard time from the BTR market and saying that there was over £700 million worth of investment was on hold in Glasgow for BTR because of rent caps, of all these different things. So I think that will plod along. As I said before, does it change property factors? Not really, because there's a huge amount of buildings already there, as we've talked about. It doesn't actually need all these new builds being home ownership to allow the factoring industry to continue. Some factors will probably diversify into build to rent. If it grows to a size that it requires that. Buy to let, slightly different. I think I'm seeing more and more people getting out of that. And I think the problem is there that the vast majority of landlords own one or two properties. It's a pension. It's a small income for them, or it was a small income in many cases. They're not these big conglomerates that own thousands of flats. And again, with all this legislation happening at the same time as mortgage costs going up, a lot of these people are getting out because they're losing money and they can't do anything about it. So I think that will change a lot of these back to home ownership. Which, if you look around Europe at the moment, would be a very happy place for them. A lot of countries are trying to ban short-term rentals, etc. Spain being one of them, because Spanish people can't find a home to live in the cities because they're all Airbnbs. So that will please some people. In terms of factoring, well, factors tend to only deal with the owners of properties anyway. And again, I think, like we're demonised, sometimes I think landlords can be demonised quite often, because it's always, it's the absent landlords that are the problem. And I hear that a lot, when I think it's not really, because most landlords, it's an investment, it's a pension.
So they understand.
Most want to repair their building. Most want their building to keep its value, to keep its longevity. And they might not live there, but they're actively involved in it. But again, it's like everything. It's this minority of problems, and the perception is that the people that are speaking about it have got a perception through having to deal with 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 problematic absent landlords. But I think on the whole, to me, they're there and as responsible as homeowners. So I don't think that will change. But the more homeowners, obviously, it makes it easier in communicating. Because you tend to know more when you're out on site. There's more actual homeowners on site assisting your discussions. Do I see a huge change in it? No, I think it's as it always is. There'll be a drop in landlords, and then something will change again, and more landlords will commit back into the market. But from our industry, it doesn't really affect us unless it is this minority of absentee landlords or bad landlords, but it's the same as bad land or a bad owner. We don't see any. I don't really see any difference. You get bad owners, and they might be a landlord. That's just,
if someone doesn't want to pay, then it's they're either living there or they're not living there.
Well, that's it.
Yeah, actually, to be fair, my youngest son has a property in Glasgow that he bought with some money that he got from somewhere, and he's selling up, and he's taking his money to England. Mainly because he doesn't want to just have one up here. Second home supplement, additional dwelling supplement in England is much lower. I mean, there's not as much regulation in England, although I think it's coming. And there's not as much there. But the main reason is he can't find a letting agent who will actually pick up the phone and talk to him. So coming back to your point that we had very early on about automation, freeing up people to talk to people. I mean, he has had a nightmare over the last to actually even get someone in the organization to talk to him. Now, that the organization he was with were all very well and good. They've just been bought over, and now it's just it's carnage. He's like, I'm not doing anything else in Glasgow, Dad. I'm gonna move this down south. So I'm actually, because he lives in Portsmouth, so I'm actually beside where this stuff. Now that may be a wee bit naive and a wee bit silly, but that's the view he's been provided with because of the service that he's been provided with.
And is that because they're inundated at the moment with this reducing stock?
Yeah.
With because last year when we were looking for a flat for our daughter, I went along and went to a few viewings, and there was 50 people at it.
Yeah.
For one flat, and the flat was horrific.
Yeah.
Yet there was 50 people at this, and they were
Yeah.
looking for £1,500 a month in the West End for a 2-bedroom flat.
But there was a bit of a shithole.
Yeah, and it was. But if that stock's reducing,
then
that supply and demand is just going up, which means these people will be run off their feet and not be coping with the level of and the volume of business that they've got. Which is what always happens if you can't cope with the volume of business you've got, then it just goes downhill at some point.
Yeah. No, agreed. Okay. So, and we've already spoken about this actually, but we'll get to the question specifically. There's some talk about how the tide will turn back as people will be craving human connection as opposed to the isolation of social media and online interaction. Would you agree? And how do you think this will impact factoring?
100%. I see it in my kids. I see it in people around me. I think I've always said online interaction it's a great tool for passing on information. It's a great tool for fact checking. Or looking for information and checking it. Although nowadays, whether it's accurate is getting harder and harder.
ChatGPT proves that, doesn't it?
It's getting harder and harder to identify. But it's a great information tool. It's a great tool for learning. To me, that's where it should end. To me, there shouldn't be. It shouldn't be the be all and end all. You shouldn't be making major decisions via text, via email. There has to be, to me, face to face. Contact. And I think we've talked about this before. Pre-COVID, it was all about what is communication and how much body language is involved, and how much is tone, how much is actually speaking. And I think the majority of communication is body language. And that gets completely lost when you're in a Zoom call, when you're in these things. And we've talked about this. When we're sitting across from each other, I can tell when you've stopped speaking, so I can start to speak. Whereas the last time we did this online, I didn't know when you were ready to stop. I didn't know what you were doing because I couldn't really see your body.
I don't even know what I'm doing most of the time.
But I think when people get together in a room, they learn, they grow, they bounce off each other, they're happier. There's a more social inclusion. You see people out for lunch, they're sitting in the walls outside chatting away. I think, and I see that in our customers as well. I can see it starting to get back that way. I think customers are now easier, as they always have been, as anyone is, when there's a problem, if you go and speak to them about it. If you go and see them about it, rather than responding to a 10-page email. Just pick up the phone or go out and see the person, and 9 out of 10 times there's an agreement made, or everyone leaves that either satisfied or happy. And that's down to them starting to, as we've talked about, engage with the person. Actually say, well, actually, this person isn't a liar. They're not at it. They're not out to do it. They're just a normal, good human being who's doing a job and is telling me the truth. They might have got it wrong. I might not like the truth, but actually quite like the person. So I'm coming away from that with a different opinion of where I was when I sent my email. And I think I hope that's the way it keeps going. I hope, and I think because of what we talked about, is because of how easy it is for what's on social media not to be true. I think even the youth are starting to
realize
see that and starting to say, actually, that's not right. That's not. And through the summers and the rain, my son's on Fortnite talking to his pals. Online playing Fortnite. But the minute you say, do you want to go and meet them and play football, he'd rather do that. I'd rather go and see them face to face and play with them because even they can see it's not the same. And he's 9.
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely a slow turn in that.
Yeah.
Where that gets to. And I think it's because of your social media. I think people are saying I can't actually trust what I'm hearing or what I'm seeing, and even when you're in dealing with business, you're having to be very careful with emails that are coming in, and you're getting emails from people asking you to do something, and you're WhatsApping them. So like our finance director John, he sent me an email, can you do this? And I'm WhatsApping him and saying, did you send me an email? Because I'm not in the office today, but I've got this email saying, can you authorize a payment to someone? But it just doesn't quite look like you. And he's saying, it was. I was just in a bit of a rush, so I just typed it, and it probably didn't look like something that I would say. So I think that's a big part of it.
I mean, there's scams. I mean, I've heard horror stories over the years, and working in kind of tech my entire life. I mean, I'll not say what it is, but we have a very, very, very convoluted process of actually making a payment out of our business if we're not sitting in the room beside each other, and that doesn't happen often because we do have home working, and I'm not here all the time, and we have a very convoluted. Even although I'm absolutely convinced I know where it's come from, and I know where the payment's being made to, I would still every time go through this process because it happens too often.
And we're the same. We're obviously making huge numbers of payments in terms of customer repairs, and we do 3 a week. But that goes through about 5 people at the moment. Just to check and there's only 3 of us in the organisation that can press the final button. And that's myself, my business partner, and one other. And that's it. Because of it's just so easy now.
You've got to have it locked down. Good, cool. Okay, so final question. I'm looking forward to answer this. Is there ever a time when property managers are replaced by AI?
Never.
Good. I've kind of figured with everything you've said you were going to say that.
I think some people will try it. Okay. There's no doubt about that. I think they'll try to develop things like chatbots, etc., which we've seen already. Some in the industry have started that. And they'll maybe try and take away the human edge by stopping emails and doing these kind of things to have them onto these AI chatbots, but it won't work. We even automated payments don't work at the moment fully. Mm-hmm. When we say to some of our customers, we've got an automated payment line, I'm going to put you onto that. No, I need you to take my payment for me because I don't trust it. So that's one reason. I think people will try it. And I think it will work for some in some ways. I just don't think it. Well, I went to the TPI conference in London. Was that this year? It was earlier this year. And there was a great talk from a guy who's involved in AI, and he made a very good point. He says, no matter what you're told, AI doesn't think for itself.
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
It's just more intelligent programming, right?
It just learns from what you give it and what it reads and what it's able to see. So it'll never be able to engage with a customer that way. It'll never be able to change its tack halfway through a meeting because it's read the room and realised this isn't working. I'm going to try a different way. It's never going to,
unless you've taught it to do that.
Unless you've taught it to do it, but you're going to have to teach it 1,000 different ways. And you're going to be in a room, for instance, you could be in a room with 20 people, all from different backgrounds with different opinions, and property managers learn the skills and how to deal with that. And that can change every day. So you could have that same meeting every day of the week, and it could be 20 different. So that's where I think it is. I don't think AI will ever be able to understand us Glaswegians.
It can't even go up in a lift in a voice activated 11.
We look at in factoring, for all it is, there's so many different people attached to factoring. But as you'll have seen time and time again, not everyone ever understands it. And never understands all the difficulties that surround trying to maintain all these different buildings and the different nuances and the different makeups of owners. And people can be in the industry for 10, 15 years and they never fully understand it, or people from down south don't get the differences. But I think the main one for me is, as you said, it's It's being able to move the conversation where it needs to go, or where the customer wants it to go. The AI will never be able to. We need to use it. There's no doubt about it, as we've talked about. And it should be a great tool that makes us better.
Doing what you do.
It makes our people better, and it makes the service to our customers better. But
it won't ever replace.
It won't ever replace people. I can't see it. And it will in some, driverless cars, all these different things. Yes, it replaces people for streamlined tasks. Yes, if you've got this needs to go in this box every day at 4 o'clock, absolutely. AI is great for that, these kind of things, or you need information. But when it comes to interacting and understanding people and emotions, another thing, emotion's a huge part of what we do.
Yeah.
Because we get people on the phone who are full of emotion for their own reasons.
Yeah.
And it's understanding what that is, or getting to the back of that, that actually can often get you around that customer, because it's not necessarily what's happened. It's not necessarily the gutter's broken, it's not been fixed.
Mm-hmm.
There's something deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a skill that I think is only humans have, that they can actually start to get to the bottom of that and empathise and understand and maybe do something that they shouldn't do because of it. Yeah. So this isn't in the script, this isn't in the rules, but I'm going to do it because of this emotional position that we're in. And so I think I could never see AI changing that.
Yeah. No, I get what you mean. I think the other thing is as well that if you do have someone who wants to, I'm not a fan of chatbots personally. I mean, they have a place and everything like that. But I mean, even I thought from a conversation we had earlier, I thought this was an age thing. Maybe the older generation want to talk to someone, younger generation don't. But going back to the point I made about my son earlier, I mean, his last resort was to email the most senior person he could find an email address for and say, "Will someone just bloody talk to me?"
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So, and there's no way you can deal with that. The other thing is as well, a lot of people, when they're annoyed and frustrated and send in an email or whatever, I mean, the term keyboard warrior springs to mind. You do get people like that because they're full of emotion. They're sending this email. The last thing they want is an automated response to say, "Here's the answer to your question."
Yeah,
they want a human being to empathize with them, phone them, and help them work through the problem. And the other thing, I mean, I go off on a tangent all the time, and probably about to do it now, but when you're having a conversation with something, there's going to be a light bulb moment where you think about something else and go, "Oh, and remember, you can do X, Y, and Z as well." Do you know what I mean? That's a human process. That's very difficult to emulate.
But wouldn't it be great if AI was able to receive this email from this customer, and it was able to, when the staff member gets it, it's answered all the questions in the body to say that statement's wrong, here's the truth.
Yeah.
In terms of this building and this thing, so that when the person goes to respond, they've almost got the bones of their response.
Yeah.
But what they do is they pick up the phone.
Yeah.
They've got the bones of the answers, and they can say, instead of it being 5 working days to respond because it's massive email, they're able to go back to them in a day and say, "I've got your email. Here's the answers to 3 of the points straight away," without thinking about it, because it's in the system. AI's helped me do it. Let's have a conversation. Let me come out and meet you, and we'll see what because this isn't clearly the real issue.
Yeah.
Is there bigger problems? Is there something else you want us to do?
Yeah.
To me, that's where AI fits into that. Because I've never used a chatbot and not ended up speaking to someone.
Yeah. Exactly.
Never in my life. You get to a point, you go, "This is useless."
Yeah.
And you press the button. Do you want to speak to an assistant? Yes. And it might have been on the chatbot, you're speaking to a real person, but they've never been able to answer the query that you need.
Yeah. That's because you used the word 11.
I said, "Oh."
Someone said that to me. I can't remember who it was. It was another client. We were talking about chatbots. Says, whenever I get, it's on the phone. Whenever I get an automated, tell me what your word is you want to talk about, I always just go 11, and he gets through to someone very, very.
I don't even use the wee button in my car because it gets see the wee voice button to try and call somebody. It just never works for me.
Yeah. I have Siri set to an Australian woman so that her accent's as alien as mine is to Siri. So, okay, right. Thank you very much, David. That's been absolutely great. Thanks for coming on.
Not at all. It was enjoyed.
I enjoyed
as always.
Well. Thank you.
Thank you.